Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk is a game developed by Nikita Kryukov. It's a self-described visual novel where the player acts as a voice within the protagonist's head and must help her go to the store and buy milk. It's a simple concept with a short runtime of about 20 minutes, but in those 20 minutes, this game doesn't waste any time. The game is a psychological horror and quite explicitly explores mental illness and the struggle of doing something as simple as buying milk. And this game spoke to me. It made me feel seen. The way this game explores escapism, anxiety, being stuck in cycles and attempting to break them is presented in such a visceral way, despite having such vague and sometimes unreadable visuals. Every element of this game plays into that. From the sound design to the dialogue choices, it all comes together to paint a realistic and very grim picture of whatever this person is dealing with. The game begins with our protagonist, commonly referred to as Milk, walking down the road to the store. She comments on the fact it's been a long time since she left the house, and spends this time rehearsing what she's going to say. It's at this point that we're introduced to the concept that we, the reader, are something that Milk has created to help organize her thoughts. She says that it may make things easier if she acts as though she's in a visual novel, a clear coping mechanism and some form of escapism that's helping her deal with facing the fear of leaving her house. Along the way, we're given various dialogue options, which tend to take two forms. One being more nice and supportive, and one being rude, kind of degrading and unsupportive. You'll learn very quickly, if you take the latter route, that you get hit with this screen. It looks like it doesn't help me at all. And then the game restarts. Knowing that the role we play is that of a voice inside of Milk's head, I think these two paths present two very different thought cycles. And the negative options we see, even when pushing through with the supportive ones, represent Milk's subconscious thoughts. These negative, often impulsive things we think about ourselves that just sit at the back of our heads, always there, ever present, and when we bring them to the forefront, the cycle restarts. And this game really focuses on cycles and the feeling of spiraling. As Milk keeps walking down the street, obsessing over what she's going to say at the store, she begins to have trouble walking. Not physically, she can still walk, but she realizes one foot is on the grass and one is on the pavement. And this tiny, minute piece of information, brought forward by the reader, is enough to make her spiral. Counting the exact number of steps, focusing in on the semantics of the amount of physical steps she's taken, and now the amount of steps she has to take to fix her issue. It can't be as simple as taking a step back, or just moving forward. She has to know exactly how many steps she's taken, and how many she needs to take. It's a very exhausting thought process. And immediately, about 2 minutes into this experience, we're shown exactly where Milk is at. Because this dialogue can be kind of draining. Much like experiencing this kind of thought process can be very draining, and often feel endless. The player then reminds Milk that she only has an hour left until the store closes, and if she doesn't get the milk, she is going to be very, very guilty. An interesting choice of words which plays into an interaction later on. But I think it's important to note that the player says you will be very guilty. Not that you will feel guilty, but you will be in the wrong, no matter how you feel or whether that is true. A very toxic mindset which leaves no room for arguments and is just very harsh. And it's very easy to fall into this trap, not giving yourself the benefit of the doubt or believing you're capable of just making mistakes. This belief that you have to be perfect, but no matter what, you will always be in the wrong. I love how this game can communicate all of that with just one text box. But anyway, after the player says this, Milk breaks out of her spiral regarding the steps and continues towards the store. As she enters, she turns to the first person she sees. Hello, can I... This figure, this strange, distorted shape before you that blends into the background, repeats the same phrase over and over and over. Excuse me, what? 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 What? Excuse me, excuse me. This back and forth continues on and on until Milk explains to the player why she is scared of the letter O. We're then presented with this black void, an endless expanse which sucks everything into it. It's complete nothingness. The interaction continues, and nothing changes. Until Milk gathers all of her will and says, "Oh, back." The mysterious figure then leaves. The only way out of this interaction, this seemingly endless cycle of bouncing back and forth, was to confront the thing she was scared of, to go outside of her comfort zone and face her fears. Whether this person is representative of something or was just an actual person, there is a deep underlying fear there that Milk was refusing to acknowledge. And the moment that she did, she was able to move forward. The player acknowledges her win and encourages her to do that more often. This is so important. This is a huge step for her, especially when already in an uncomfortable situation. The girl then comes up to the milk section and is promptly reminded why she's actually here. Take the milk to the checkout and buy it. After the player tells her this, she reaches out for the bag of milk and goes on a tangent. I sigh and reach out to take the milk, or rather, the bag with the milk inside. Or rather, a bag of milk inside a bag. Or rather, a bag of milk inside a bag of milk. Or rather, a bag of milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag. Or rather, a bag of milk inside a bag of milk inside... Another loop. Another spiral. A descending thought process that goes on and on and on and on in an attempt to distract herself from what she actually has to do. She's then interrupted by the reader telling her that she only has 15 minutes, and if she doesn't hurry up, she'll get it at home again. This time not ending the cycle via any kind of victory, but more of a looming threat. Just another thing for her to worry about. We're not even 5 minutes into this game, and it's clear that this girl's thought process is this constant anxiety-inducing feedback loop. It's destructive, but also a coping mechanism for something much deeper. Something that we are yet to learn about. The bag of milk inside another bag of milk inside another bag of milk feels like a representation of her compartmentalizing her thoughts, burying trauma and not wanting to deal with or face what she fears. She makes her way over to the cash register. Another figure appears. These beady eyes that stare directly into the soul with no other identifiable features. An unsettling obstacle. She asks if she can have the milk. The figure points out that she has it. She puts it on the counter and asks if she can have it.
No.
Please?
No.
She continues to beg and says if she gets home without milk, her mum will throw her out of the window. Something which becomes a lot more relevant soon. She asks why she can't have it, and the figure responds,
Give more.
And we have to remind her she needs to actually pay for it. At this point, she hands over the money and is finally able to leave with the milk. So Milk makes her way back home, walking along the same path we started on, once again dragging her feet across the asphalt and grass. As she is walking, she's nearly hit by a bear, or what she thinks is a bear, which is actually a truck driving down the road she's on. She sees the red taillights as glowing eyes that stare at her. She's convinced that she was nearly hit by a giant creature. We tell her that she could have died. She asks if someone would really hit an innocent girl with a bag of milk. If you respond by telling her the world is a cruel and dangerous place, she tells us she's not living in the world we talk about. This becomes more and more clear because whether it's a result of her medication or the condition she's dealing with, she doesn't see the world very clearly. She says the world adjusts to her. When she's in a hurry, the traffic lights turn off, and when she feels like crying, rain appears to hide her tears. Whatever the reason is, She is creating these circumstances to make the world easier to navigate. You can actually bring this up and ask her if she's considered it's all just in her head. She's confused. She says this isn't at all what the manual said, and that these pills don't work for her. This is the first time we're actually learning about Milk being on any sort of medication, and we then move into probably the most important part of the game. Milk goes over to a bench and sits on it to speak directly to the reader. She says that she knows she's going crazy, and that the medications are becoming less and less effective. She hopes that things will happen painlessly. As we continue, she makes a point that she does not want to name her diagnoses, that she wants to be seen for who she is, which is interesting, considering the role we play is that of one Milk has made up in her head. She's essentially talking to herself here. She's so desperate to be seen as normal and more than her diagnoses that she won't even acknowledge it herself. But I also think from a gameplay perspective, it's very interesting. Not putting a name to whatever the character is going through allows us as the player to kind of inject our own experiences into it. Whatever your diagnosis may or may not be, there's going to be some sort of element that you can relate to here, and not giving it a specific name really allows you to feel validated and seen by it. I know that was at least the case for me. I think at this point it becomes clear that her medication is wearing off. She's become disillusioned with the idea of the visual novel and talks about how stupid and crazy the whole thing is. She becomes super self-aware and even comments directly on what the player sees. Red. All she sees is red. Blood everywhere. She's even forgotten what other colors look like. She then asks the reader to promise to not ask what happened. You can say yes or no or ask what happened. Regardless, she acknowledges that in the end, she's just talking to herself, and it would have come up sooner or later. It always does. We're shown a new screen. A jumbled mess of pixels, predominantly red, that has no discernible features. She tells us that this is her dad, or some of his parts at least. She goes on to explain that he jumped out of a window, and that's her last memory before a huge gap. Milk is a young girl dealing with her father's suicide, on and off medications, trying to escape from the world she is in and doing anything to avoid confronting what happened. If there's one thing this game for sure portrays, it is PTSD, and in such an unapologetic way, it shows us the horrifying reality of what it can do. The game's visuals are almost two-toned. Nothing is very clearly communicated, and it's all incredibly vague. But it serves such a specific purpose. Milk is out in the world, an unfamiliar and uncomfortable situation after what happened, and she can't see anything but what happened. Red. A red coat just paints everything, and she doesn't process the world around her as everything just blends into one big red mess. After she tells us about her dad, she says this is the first time she's been able to buy something without a major incident. She says it's most likely because of the medication, but thanks you, the reader, for helping her. The role we play, to me, seems like more of a hallucination caused by the medication. Something she's able to construct within her mind to deal with this situation as a result of these meds. She tells us she has tried so many medications that she can hardly feel the difference between them anymore, but she begins to confide in the reader, opening up more and more, becoming more grounded, and how there's so much she wants to tell us that the medication wears off. We tell her that she needs to go home. The music stops. Silence. Blissful silence. All we hear is the wind passing by. The real world. As she makes it back to the apartment, she just stands and looks over the balcony railing, repeating this every day to the point she's no longer afraid of heights. She takes us time to enjoy that silence. She says that the drugs create unpleasant melodies in her head, mixing with the world around her, creating a terrible dissonance, and this is shown perfectly in the game. No more music from this point on plays. No more sound effects, just the wind. She then heads back into the apartment.
Did you bring the milk?
Hi, Mom.
Did you bring the milk?
Yes, Mom.
Did your new medicine help?
Yes, Mom.
Go to bed.
Yes, Mom. Her mother's dark, vacuous eyes greet her when she makes it home. A complete and utter coldness when she talks to her. She hands over the milk and is immediately sent to her room. We're not given much information about the mother in this game, but I think it's made very clear that there are some issues there. Earlier in the game, she said if she didn't get the milk, her mom would throw her out of a window. She talks about familial issues, which led to her father's suicide. And the way she is visually portrayed is most likely how Milk sees her. She's already dealing with a lot, and on top of that, she doesn't seem to have a support system. The one person who could understand what she's going through is clearly not a supportive or positive figure in her life. Milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk is a difficult experience. The game doesn't have remarkable visuals or super engaging gameplay, but it manages to achieve something special. It portrays mental illness in such a real and tangible way, and despite how short the game is, it truly gets us to care about the protagonist and her experience. This game isn't scary because it has jump scares or super unsettling imagery or anything like that. It doesn't rely on that. It's because it gives an honest look into the difficult reality of mental illness and trauma. This game isn't about saving this character. You can't save her. We're simply along for the ride. I think Milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk is a testament to what a game can be, what an experience can be, and what it can mean to different people. There is so much you can achieve when you create something with passion and honest intent, and I think that this game is so important. I would highly recommend it to anyone, but especially if you are somebody who has struggled with mental illness. For me, it was somehow a very therapeutic experience. Like I said, it made me feel seen. Of course, bear in mind there are many possible triggers, but if you have the time, I would definitely check it out. I'm well aware that there is a sequel, and I'm actually yet to play through the entire thing and to get all the endings, but I would love to explore it in the same way at some point. But I think as a standalone experience, this game is truly special. Hi, I'm Amari. This is my first time doing any sort of YouTube content in a long time. It's a learning experience, but I really want to continue making this sort of content, and hopefully you stick around for the journey and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Goodbye.